Okay, I'm trying something different. I got this other computer set up next to me, so I can. I've got all the mics turned off the way that I want, so hopefully it won't pick up any background noise, and it'll work just fine. We'll see. We'll see at the end when I upload the video. Okay, well, welcome everybody. To start off, is there anybody here that's new? Anyone willing to? Jess is new. It's great to have new people. Matthew, anyone else? I appreciate everybody turning on their cameras too. It's great to see faces because I know some of the names, but it's hard to connect the faces sometimes when I run into folks at events. So we all appreciate that. All right, so to start off, one of the things that KnightKrawler has been doing this now, I think this actually might be our 20th roundtable that we've held. And one of the things that we want to do this year is we want to have other teams get a chance to run one of these roundtables. Not only to give them the opportunity, but to take some pressure off of Lexi and myself and the other people from KnightKrawler who sort of organize the topics and try to keep the conversation going. So it would be great if you're interested in hosting a topic that could be just, I want to have a discussion around this. And that means that you're willing to keep the conversation going. And when there's a lull, ask a question or share some advice. Or if you're giving a presentation. So if you've got an upcoming Jumpstart presentation or another event that you are going to present at and you want a place to practice, this is a great place to practice. I think we've only done one presentation so far, and that was on Onshape. Went over very well. Actually, it was the most viewed video when we upload these to YouTube. That was the most viewed video that we've had. So the presentations are very popular. If anyone wants to give a presentation as a place to practice or just to get some experience, that would be awesome as well. Lexi, can you share, maybe you've already done this, can you share the link? Thank you. So Lexi created a form. If you want to sign up to take the conversation for the night, there's a form. Also, in the email that I sent out today, the email went out late because I was really hoping somebody would sign up to lead tonight's event, but they didn't. But in the email that went out today, I listed every topic that has been requested. When people sign up for the mailing list, they have an option to say, what are you interested in hearing about? I listed some of them I had to combine because they were very similar, but I listed every topic that's been suggested. So if you go through there and you're like, oh, for sure, our team definitely wants to learn more about this, ask to lead that conversation. Ask the questions you're most interested in. You don't have to come with all the answers to lead a conversation. It would just be awesome if some other folks were willing to step up and take the lead for the night and kind of plan the topic and the agenda. Okay, so with that, and I'll ask that again at the end of the night if anyone's interested in doing that. But with that, our topic for tonight is around finances, budgeting, ordering stuff, and how you plan for that. I'm really interested if anyone here wants to share if they're doing any planning in case they get the chance and how they're going about doing that. It's something that we struggle with every year of how do we plan for that just in case. I know that KnightKrawler just went through our budget meeting last week, so this is fresh in our minds. I'd love to get Lexi's take on how that went. That's the second time she's been through the budget process for KnightKrawler. But for most of our captains and student leaders, it was the first time through, and it was really interesting to see the questions they had asked. So I want to open the floor to anybody that wants to kick off the conversation on finances or budgeting or what your team does or what you're interested in learning about.
Can I ask what KnightKrawler's budgeting meeting looks like that you all just mentioned?
Yeah, Lexi, I would love it to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, Scott's our treasurer. So Scott has access to all of our financial data and he puts it into, there's both a ledger, obviously, which records all the transactions, and then more like a budget spreadsheet. And so what we do every year is in the spring, we go and we set, actually in the fall, at the beginning of the new season, we go over like, hey, this is what we budgeted in previous years. For a topic example, like this is what we expect to get in sponsorship from a company. And then this is what we actually got from them, which we put in the spring. So we have 2 yearly budget meetings, one when captains are incoming in the fall and a second one in the spring. And so Scott puts all of that data together for us. And then as student leaders and mentors, we sit together in a classroom and we go through line by line all of the items, and we budget how much we expect for the incoming year based on previous years and what we know might be changing with the upcoming year. Whether like, all right, well, this parent that we had a connection to a company with no longer works here, so maybe we're going to set the expected contribution to 0. And that gives us a really good perspective into what we need to work on as student leaders. So for our students who are interested in fundraising, they can say, okay, we have a $5,000 deficit. Like, how are we going to plan going into this season to make that up? And I think it's a really good opportunity for especially our student leaders to see like what goes on the back end. So like, yes, Build has a budget, but like, where does that come from? And also the opportunity to go through the spending of the last year to be like, hey, when we're making this budget, like, let's think about what parts we already bought, what we expect to need to buy, stuff like that. Does that explain it a little bit? Do you have any other questions, Ian?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know right now, well, I personally would like our team to work on a way to have a more, right now our budgeting is very nebulous, at least from the student end of what's going on. So I'm definitely looking for suggestions on potential ways to make it maybe a more clear process.
I think a differentiator too between KnightKrawler and a lot of teams is that KnightKrawler is, I hesitate in how to say this because I want to recognize the school's contributions to the team, but about 90% of our budget is managed by the nonprofit, by the Booster Club. The school covers our one head coach, that salary, and then a bus to an off-season event and a bus to Duluth. And the rest is covered by the Booster Club. So that is about 90% of our budget. We either collect from the students and their parents or sponsors and fundraising and those types of things. So because we're doing so much with so much of the funds, our budgeting process gets a lot easier. If you're collecting money and you're giving it to the school and then you're giving invoices to the school and you're not really managing the ledger, the school's managing the ledger, those things get a lot harder because you don't actually have access to the transactions and the bank balance and all of those other things. So it gets a little bit trickier. I will say that I'm going to paste this link in the chat, but I created this budgeting process for the team. Oh, why won't it let me enter? Oh, weird. I can't paste in the chat. I don't know why. If you go to team2052.com/accounting, a few years ago when I took over the accounting process, the accounting was being managed in a couple of different spreadsheets and then also on, it was either MS Money or it was TurboTax or Turbo. It was one of the money programs that everybody can buy. And it was kind of tricky to figure out where are we at right now with the way that the money was being managed. And so I've been a small business owner for over a decade. I've managed the books for all of my companies. I think I've had 3 different companies, one that's lasted the entire time and a couple other ones here and there. And so I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. I can't advise you on tax stuff, but I've been doing bookkeeping for a long time for my own businesses. So I wanted to create this accounting program that had a couple of requirements. One is it had to be in software that everybody could get into and understand. We didn't want to have to pay a licensing fee for a QuickBooks Online, for example, so that we could have a bunch of different logins. So you'd have the main person keeping the books there, but then you could let other people see what's going on without, so you eliminate sort of that chance of embezzlement or fraud or any of that type of stuff. You want to have good oversight. So it needed to be in that. It needed to be accessible to everybody, but it needed to be sort of locked down so that only one person is managing the books to kind of keep it clean. It also had to have a way that we could track every single transaction line by line, like you would do in a normal accounting software. We'd say, this transaction is for parts for building the robot. This transaction's for hotel rooms. This transaction's for the post office box or whatever it might be. And so I created this thing in Excel sheets. Now, creating your own accounting program is not for everybody, but we're not doing invoicing, we're not doing payroll, we're not doing all those things that you're not collecting sales tax on any products we're selling. So things get a lot easier when basically all you're doing is managing a checkbook. You're just creating a balance in your checkbook and then tracking that against kind of expenditures. So when I created this thing, I also wanted to create something that someone else could take over someday when I'm not on the team anymore. And so I created this very extensive 7-part training, 8-part training that's posted on our website as a way for kind of us to hand that accounting off to someone else so that they could take over the books and do this, but then also for a way to share with other organizations, whether they're robotics or otherwise, a pretty, I can't say simple because it's not, I mean, it teaches you step by step how to set up your books and how to do all that stuff. But a fairly simplistic, from an accountant's point of view, way of managing all your books, but then still being able to make it easy to compare your actuals versus your budget, to make it easy to do tax preparation. In fact, when it's a spreadsheet, you can write all the little macros and formulas you want to automatically fill out. This is what goes in line 1. This is what goes in line 2. This is what goes in line 3 on your tax forms every year. So it actually has made taxes a lot easier to do at the end of the year for filing your nonprofit taxes. Anyway, team2052.com/accounting. If you're interested in saying, hey, we've struggled with managing accounting and we continue to thrash, maybe this will be an option for you and you can go take a look at that. But that's the system that we use every year since I've been the treasurer. And we walk through every single line. It's about 100 line items. So we go through about 100 different line items every year and say, this is what we spent last year. This is what do you think we're going to spend this year? And the students will discuss it. We'll talk about how many students do you think we'll have on the team? How much last year, KnightKrawler spent the most money we've ever spent on robot parts. And it was largely because everything was out of stock. And so the minute we saw stuff in stock, we bought it, even if we didn't know for sure we would need it. So we have a lot of extra aluminum this year. If anyone's looking for star wheels, we have so many star wheels. We bought star wheels and ended up not using any of them. But it was the type of thing where normally we would buy 5 and we were a prototype. And we thought, if we're going to need these star wheels for the entire intake, we think we're going to need them. We should buy what we're going to need right now because we don't know if we can get any more after we get those first 5. And that was kind of the way our year went. So we have a lot of supplies and, we will have to buy less this year, most likely. But I'm curious to know if teams are planning to buy things differently based on supply chain stuff this year. It's one of the things I'm hoping we'll get to tonight. Anyway, so Ian, to answer your question, that's sort of our process. And I think Lexi did a great job of describing it. And if you want to learn more about kind of the nitty-gritty of how we manage our money, it's all in that link on that website.
I would say the Miller bots are about the same. So I took over the treasury role last year, and there was no tracking really of where we were spending money, and that drove me nuts just from a fiscally responsible adult. So I started what we call the money book. It's basically a workbook that has our checking, our debits, and our credits. And then in there we have what it specifically was for, like grouping. So whether it was MBot parts, so we built 2 robots last year. We built an every bot, and we built the one we competed with at regionals. So because we had so many incoming 9th graders, we had to keep them busy. So we have like eBot parts, MBot parts, competition. So it kind of groups it that way. And then it also links out to every receipt. So we have our receipts in a folder, and then on that spreadsheet, it links out to the receipts. And then in there, we also have an RFP process that we implemented last year. So the students, if they want to purchase something, they have to go in, put it in the RFP, link out to what it is, and then they have to get approval from at least 2 mentors before I go in and purchase. So I do all the purchasing. so that it's not a frantic, oh, we need it now, let's go run and buy it without any oversight. So they have to, explain why they need it, what it's for, how they're going to use it before it gets approval from a mentor. And then once the approval happens, then I go onto the sites and purchase the equipment. And then when it comes in, they have to mark that they've received everything as they requested it. So just like a normal RFP process, like you would for any company. So we have that, and then it also keeps like a list of who our sponsors are, where we're at in the process, whether we've reached out to them, if they've committed but we haven't received the funding yet. We also do a lot of grant writing, so we have a grant page, and then we have a fundraising page, so when we do car washes and stuff, and all of that goes into a dashboard so that at any time you can look at the dashboard and see how much money has come in and out, what percentages of our money is coming from the different revenue streams. So, but just in a Google Sheets.
How many teams here get financial support from their district?
Minneapolis gets none.
Duluth doesn't get any.
KnightKrawler, I already mentioned, KnightKrawler gets a coach and 2 buses.
I guess that's about the extent that like DNA gets, as well as we get a coach and we get some space in the school, and that's about it.
I would say we get the space in the school. One of the challenges we're having this year is with all the CTE courses being pulled out of the schools and moved into one, we lost a majority of our equipment that wasn't owned by the team. So we're needing to replace equipment this year.
For those of you that don't get much support from the school, do you have somebody that's school staff that's involved with the team?
We have one teacher.
We don't have anybody.
Our staff member used to work at the high school. Now she works at the middle school, but still has all the contacts that are appropriate to work within the high school. But that's a relatively new thing for KnightKrawler. This is our 18th year, and I think it's been 6 years since we had a faculty member back on the team. Other than that, it was just year 1 and maybe year 2.
Have you guys approached your school boards and stuff to see if, I mean, they're giving money to the football team, the basketball team, baseball team, every other team?
Yeah, we asked what the budget was for the football. I think it was football and the biking. So they spend $35,000 annually on football, but football also is a huge revenue generating entity. So they've justified it that way. But yeah, unfortunately, Minneapolis Public Schools is just in a hard spot right now with STEM. So
we kind of fought for ours, and we get some, but we're running 2 teams too. But we have 5 paid coaches, and then that's run through our activities department, so they're paid by them. So that's TRA and other benefits are included in that stipend. And then we get 1 entry fee for 1 team, and then we have some dues and membership money, which is about $7,000, and about $3,000 in supplies, and that's what we get from our district. And we get transportation as well, and they also pay for substitutes. Most of our mentors are also employed with the district, so they got to cover down when we're gone. So I don't know. It takes some lobbying, and it takes some school board coordination, but it's good questions to ask them, like why are these other things getting the money and we're not getting the money?
which school district are you in?
We're in Cass Lake, Minnesota. It's north. It's just east of Bemidji.
I should say that KnightKrawler also has received in the past a partial reimbursement for our champs transportation and housing. We are allowed by district policy, we are allowed to get up to 1/3 of travel costs for any national competition. It's just across the district. We've never gotten the full 1/3. We usually get about 20% if we get it. We've been fortunate, actually. I think we've gotten it. We've been to champs, I think, 8 times, and I think we've gotten reimbursement 3 of those 8 times. But that does happen. It usually takes us about a year from the time we submit our reimbursement to actually getting the funds. It can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. But we have gotten it 3 of the last 3 times.
I know for 21-29, we're in Minneapolis too. We get no funding from the district. But it's kind of we're in a situation where every time that we try and ask the district for anything, stuff gets worse. So we pretty much just try and avoid any interaction with our schools at all. So we have like one faculty member who is basically just a formality. But aside from that, no funding. We get space, but only when the community ed adult classes aren't in there. But like, especially with the Mura situation, which I don't know what you've heard about that, but basically every time that we get involved with the school district, they try and crack down on more things, and the more control they have over our team, the worse things get. So we're trying to stay as basically as independent as possible. 100% of our funding is from our own sponsorships and fundraisers.
Which school are you out of, Mason?
Southwest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a similar situation. The more you ask, the worse it gets. Minneapolis is just really, they want to tout that they're STEM friendly, but they then pull the programs. So thankfully we have a principal who's really good with us. So we're allowed to use 1.5 rooms for our equipment. And then we have several storage areas that we have to pack in and pack out of every day. But as far as like district funding, it's been pretty bad. So we're similar. We moved to a nonprofit, so we've made ourselves nonprofit so that any equipment and stuff that is given to the team is no longer the district's. It's actually owned by the nonprofit, so that they can't continue to take our equipment away, which is what they were doing as well. But we have to fundraise every year for all funding. We don't even get buses or anything like that. So
yeah, for like transportation and travel fees, we don't get any transportation either from the district. We use cars to get everywhere, and we have been for years. But yeah, and with travel fees, we used to have 100% of the travel fees for each student paid by the team. Last year, we started charging, I think it was $150 if you could pay it, for traveling to each competition, because we had to go to 2 traveling ones, and we cut our travel fees by 60%. And that made a huge difference. Last year we had a really, really cheap year. We only ended up spending $3,000 on a robot and $7,000 on travel. So we're all right looking into next year, but we've also lost a $10,000 sponsor, as did a couple other teams around the state. They just dropped first entirely, but we're working on fundraising that. We've made $1,500 in 3 days. So via sponsorships, that is.
how do you go after sponsors? Just generally, our team has had few sponsors, but they do lots of grant writings. But I'd like to see us move into more of a sponsorship that's year over year rather than continually writing for grants, just because the amount of time spent.
Yeah,
Joseph.
our team does. So yeah, we're mostly sponsorship driven, and mostly it's like we last year we came up with a list of a bunch of local companies that met certain requirements. So like the right amount of annual profit, because if they're too big, they're really hard to get to. If they're too small, they're not going to give you any money. And from that list, we just started basically contacting each one. We had students write customized emails to each of them. This year, the money that we fundraised now one was from a restaurant nearby. And we got $500 out of that. And it was literally a 10-minute conversation with them. Check written, done. It's mostly just about going out there and contacting as many places as you can.
Joseph?
Yeah, we do something kind of similar. We have sort of a variety of means by which we locate and try to find new sponsors. Similarly to you, Mason, and to Ultraviolet, we look at like local companies. Great River is like very weirdly located, like the middle of a business district, which is weird for our school, but somewhat convenient for us. We have some like neighboring companies that we find that like STEM related companies are more likely to sponsor robotics teams. And so we'll usually reach out to them first. We also, I think that's somewhat helpful, but we don't always hear back as much from those all of those sponsors. What we do find is really helpful is reaching out to the students and mentors on our team and seeing if anyone on the team has any connections to sponsors or companies that could potentially sponsor our team. So I'd say like probably 75% of the sponsors we have now are companies that have or had workers that were in some way connected to students or mentors on our team from the past. So we'll reach out to our team, be like, hey, do you have any neighbors, family members, family friends that work at companies that might want to sponsor a team like ours? If so, share a potential contact to that sponsor, or talk to us about how we could get in contact with that sponsor. And we usually find that that's pretty receptive. Again, we don't always hear back, but it works usually pretty well for us. And we have somewhat of a unique strategy in how we recruit sponsors, because we send out an initial email. First, we're in the process of doing that now. So we have like an email, usually like a base email to returning sponsors that we'll sort of copy and paste. Sometimes we'll, especially for newer sponsors, we'll like edit parts of it, personalize them a little bit, and then send them out. But then in those emails, both to returning sponsors and to new sponsors, we'll ask if they want to schedule something that we call a sponsor presentation, where we meet with them either virtually or in person, and talk to them about our team, all the cool stuff we do, why they might want to sponsor a team like ours. We don't, not every sponsor wants to do it, but a lot of our sponsors really appreciate that initial connection that really grounds that relationship that, is so vital to them supporting us. And yeah, we find that both of those strategies work really well. Though, yeah, I would say, Mason, you mentioned losing a $10,000 sponsor, and I think we're sort of in a similar situation, learning our lessons about not putting all our eggs in one basket, because we did have like one primary sponsor. I'd say that we're generally doing pretty well, but yeah, that is one piece of advice I would say is when pursuing sponsors, it's like, it's great if you can find a $10,000 sponsor, but also like look elsewhere. Yeah.
Does anyone have any unique fundraising that they do that they like to share with other teams that they might want to consider?
Actually,
Matthew, you had your hand up. Go ahead, please continue.
Yeah. No, thank you. One last thing about just kind of like what you do for sponsors. Something that's kind of unique for us is because we have so many teams kind of really close to us. It's a little harder for us to kind of find those like bigger sponsors or whatever. So we devised a strategy of like cold calling and also bringing like business packets to teams. So we have a large spreadsheet of teams that we've contacted or haven't contacted. So like this is the season that like we won't see half the team because right after school they're going and cars to go to these businesses to drop off a business packet or to set up these meetings, or if they're at the school we're really trying to get on the phone and trying to reach out to some of these contacts that we have either gathered or something like that. So over the years we've just kind of put all these businesses that we've reached out to and have success with or haven't had success with, because some years are better for others with businesses, so some years they give and some years they don't, so we're really kind of like a broad reach. So like people were mentioning, they get these like $10,000 sponsorships. Denfeld 4009, we don't really have that kind of luxury. We've gotten most of our money from those like $250, $500, $1,000 kind of sponsorships, and that's kind of how we've went out and did it, is just trying to hit a wide variety of businesses, not only the businesses that are involved in STEM, but other businesses, looking at alumni, not from just your team, but your school, because several alumni are probably out there starting businesses or higher up in the school that want to give back to the school, but not necessarily a club that they've been a part of. So those are some of the strategies kind of our team has come up with. Also grant writing as well, like Jess mentioned.
Lots of hands up.
Matthew, what does cold calling look for your team? How do you facilitate that process? Because we've tried that in the past and it's not worked as well for us.
So we have a script that we normally go off of. So we pretty much call in and we kind of run off of a script. And we don't ask necessarily for money. We ask for a point of contact or to set up a meeting. You get your foot in the door, because it kind of goes along with like just kind of going up to somebody. Typically you're getting a receptionist or somebody who can't really make that call. So instead of like going into a 5-minute long speech about what FIRST is and how it can impact the team and the students, we're really just trying to get our foot in the door and be like, hey, we're a high school team. We are trying to look to set up a meeting or talk to somebody who might be interested in doing this, just because there is that kind of like secretary or just middleman person, I guess you could call them. So that's kind of how we devise that strategy.
Is that what everybody was going to ask?
No, I
all the
had
hands
my
went
hand
down.
up for the other thing of like unique fundraising things that teams do. Now that I'm not at risk of my cat closing out this window by walking off my keyboard or knocking over anything on my desk, I've gotten him off of it. But one thing 3926 does is every year, so our team doesn't have a registration fee for students to join the team, and we feel that it's important that we keep the team accessible for everyone, like at a baseline for participation. One of the things we do every fall is we do a letter writing campaign where we write letters to our family members, like our I sometimes will write it to like my aunts or like my grandmother who lives in New York, where we explain what we learn on the team, why it's really impactful for us, and then we ask for just like a small donation, like if they have if they're willing to donate like $20 or something like that. And usually each student sends out like 3 to 5 of them, and it's usually really successful because 3 to 5 times 30 students, it adds up to being a really big fundraiser. And then from perspective of the family members, now at Thanksgiving dinner, you have something to talk about. Oh, I heard you're on a robotics team, right? And then that launches more into, because we usually do it around November, and then kind of launches into conversations. So it kind of also spreads what FIRST is to more than just like the local vicinity of the family who doesn't see their child for 4 months every winter.
Matthew, you should go first.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess two things in terms of like unique sponsorships. And I guess this can kind of loop back to what Scott was saying, how we fundraise for, championships, maybe not necessarily knowing we're going. One thing we do is we try to get parents involved, and they help run, or I guess run, a silent auction. So having them kind of reach out to businesses for things and stuff like that, and we schedule that right around before championships start, so it gives the students something that they'll help volunteer at, but not necessarily have to put effort towards, kind of letting the parents get involved and helping the team as well. And then another thing that we've done in the past that, um, has been really nice is um, we I don't know how to put it. We have this. It's called Give MN. It's kind of like GoFundMe. So there's the Give to the Max Day that's coming up, I think, November, and that's really good to like push out to parents and people that are want to be involved and can only give that, like, maybe $5 to $10. And I think this year we raised the most we have, or I guess last year's we raised the most we have out of that, and that kind of, I think, raised close to like maybe $1,000, or $500 to $800. So it was a good amount of money, um, and that was just something that was easy enough to just kind of put on blast on our social medias and let people share and stuff like that, and we got a surprising amount of money out of that too. So I guess those are a few things that we've done on our team that's kind of really helped us. Um, yeah.
To piggyback from the gift from Give MN, so it's free to sign up for a Give MN page. Um, just if any of the other teams have never done it, it's free to sign up for Give MN page. The nice thing is that the Give MN allows the people who are giving to pay the fee that would normally come out and go to Give MN. So if they're giving $25, they can cover the $1.50 fee. So they're paying $26.50, but you're getting the whole $25. Um, and Give to the Max Day in Minnesota is top in the nation for the most dollars given on Give to the Max Day. So a lot of people know about it. A lot of people give on that day. And Give MN also does all the receipts, so that they get receipts. If you're a nonprofit, they'll get the receipts for tax purposes. You as a team don't have to send those out.
Yeah, I just sent links to both, the Give to the Max Day, and then just kind of what our page looks like. I'm fairly certain this is our active one. It looks a little old to me, but yeah. So that's just kind of an example for just a good passive income. Sorry to piggyback on one last time, and that's something that doesn't shut off at all. That's something that stays active year round. So if you have kind of anything that goes, that give to the Max Day is that really big one, kind of that big date. But this is an active kind of thing that goes year round too, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, to jump off of that with Champs fundraising. So our team 2129 has only gone to Champs once ever, which was 2 years ago, and we found out 10 days before Champs started. So with no money. And our strategy was basically, at that point, it was too late to get sponsorships, too late to get grants. So we had to go to just direct donations. And we wrote up basically like letters that each student had. They'd forward it on to family members, pretty much everybody that they knew. They'd forward it on further. And we shot way past our goal of $25,000. And now we have by like $8,000 in a week, which is incredible. We raised 30 some $1,000. But now we have basically a fund that we try and build into in case we go to champs that we try not to spend into during the year. So that's not considered when, like, how much money do we have? We don't consider the extra money that we raised for champs because, we told people this is money to get us to champs. So in some ways it's like we're keeping that for next time, hopefully. But also when it comes to raising money through families, we've had mixed success. So we've had multiple sponsors who we got like through parent connections, fall through after a year or two, especially after the student leaves. It's really hard to maintain that sponsorship, especially if it's a company that normally wouldn't give you any money. So we had last year we had a $5,000 sponsor dropped, and I think they dropped to $500. Even though the student was still on the team, just because it had been a year, they were like, yeah, that's done. So we've had trouble maintaining that, but other sponsors, it's been much better. We send newsletters every so often. I'm not the one reading those. I don't know. And we just try and make sure that we have a connection to somebody at that company. So like in the case of our $10,000 sponsor that fell through, we've had them since 2006, and they were a sole sponsor for like 7 years, 8 years, something like that. And essentially what we've heard is that leadership or management shifted over within the company. New management doesn't see the value in it, and we lose the sponsorship. So I think it's important that we keep checking that you have the right person that you're talking to, because it's very easy to send emails or cold calls to the wrong person. Like you were saying, Matthew, you got to find the person who's important within that company. And the last thing that I had was, our team has had a history of students being very shy about sponsorships, especially sending emails, writing emails. And my favorite example of that is we have a captain from like 4 years ago who in freshman year got like 3 sponsorships without any grammar or capitalization. And so he uses emails as examples. It's like, this is why we have stainless steel bolts now. It's because he wrote an email that is garbage and very dyslexic, but it works because you just have to get out there as much as possible. Ideally, get it checked first before you send the emails, but that's 2019 problems. So, anyway.
I have a story to share too that's related to kind of that idea of looking for more than just the big sponsors of the companies. One of the things that we're talking about doing a better job of this year is cultivating our alumni network. In the past few years, we've gotten some very large donations. In 2020, after we did our big face shield project, where we delivered 35,000 either full or partial face shields to companies. We had an alumni who was on the very first team at that time, I think it was 16 years ago. And he said, I'm seeing what you're doing on Facebook. I love everything about it. I want to support you guys. And we made a $5,000 donation to the team. Last year, we had an alumni parent whose kids had all graduated who said, I want to sponsor the travel fee for 2 students. And we had a different alumni parent who had a student go through the team. They had found out through the grapevine, because they're still sort of connected to the team, that we were short for our champs trip, and wrote a check for several $1,000s to make up the difference. And so one of the things that we're looking at doing now is we get the feedback from parents and grandparents too of, this was my student's favorite part of high school. This is, if it wasn't for robotics, they wouldn't have been able to write a good acceptance letter for college. All these things that we hope that is the results for our students. And the parents and grandparents see that value, and they've been contributing to the team even after their student has left. So we're trying to think about how can we do a better job of cultivating that alumni network.
So I would
Scott, go ahead.
I would say at the Millerbats we have a parent alumni as well in the similar area. Their student found their place in robotics, and then through that finished college as an engineer and is now overseas working in Europe. But the family, through their foundation, donates like $3,000 a year to our team. Just, like last year we went and we said, our plasma cutter broke. We need to purchase a CNC machine. We're looking to do that. And she donated $3,000 towards that equipment. So I would say reach out to your alumni. The other item, my company is quite generous to their people who volunteer for places. So I would make sure you're reaching out to the parents if they're at a company. So mine does they'll donate up to $500 per. So if I volunteer 40 hours with robotics, they'll donate $500. They'll donate another $250 if I'm on the board. So that's immediately, there's nothing extra I had to do other than what I already do on the team. And then they also match. So a lot of companies will match donations that are given. My company does up to 2,500. So if I donate up to 2,500, they match. That's an additional money. So I just have to keep receipts of money I've spent for the team and then submit those. And that over last year was an additional $1,500 that came into the team just for having to submit those. So I would check with just get the, when you have like your parent meeting, we have a parent meeting at the beginning of the year, we have one in the middle and one at the end. I would just reiterate that to the parents, like if check with your company, see if there's any volunteer money out there just for volunteering if they come in on Saturdays and provide, just oversight for the team and such. Maybe those dollars can count.
Joseph, go ahead. If you guys raise your hand and there's a pause, just jump in. You don't have to be called on. Just go ahead and jump right in.
Scott, can I actually suggest alumni as a future meeting topic? Because Nomythic is also in a similar place where we're realizing that like we have not really cultivated these relationships to our alumni when there is really a want for that. And I would say that we do benefit. Our alumni really think very fondly of our team and want to support us in the ways that they can. And I think we're realizing that with a lot of the I guess the relationships that our team has as a whole that support us. So it goes for like alumni, that also goes for like parents and families of students. We're realizing that like we have we have like these surrounding communities that want to support us in all the ways that they can, but we only really contact them when we need them. We organized we set up GoFundMe's the last couple of years that our team qualified for Worlds, and that was when we called it an individual donor drive, when we reached out to all of the people that might in some way want to support the team towards achieving the goal of being able to go to champs, and we raised a lot of money through that. But then when we reflected on those fundraisers, it didn't quite sit right with us, because it's these are clearly people that love our team, and we're only asking them for money once a year, and we don't really talk to them or communicate with them outside of asking for their support. And so I think we're trying to figure out how we want to cultivate those relationships so that our team is really enfolding them into not the work, but the sort of the Nomythic culture, I guess.
Joseph, I love the idea of having a topic about cultivating alumni. I love the idea of how do you cultivate relationships or keep people in the loop in your community. Can I refer you to the Sign Up Genius Farm that Lexi posted earlier? And please sign up to host a conversation about that in a future meeting. I think it's a great topic, and I think there's a ton of work, a lot of things that we could do on KnightKrawler to create a Friends of KnightKrawler mailing list or Facebook group or something for those folks that are interested to try to keep them up to date. I'd love to have a conversation about that, because it might actually spur some action for those of us who have been thinking about it for a long time but haven't gone that extra step.
Do people send out emails to their sponsors throughout the season to just say how you're doing?
We do weekly newsletters that we send out to all of our sponsorships. I believe our alumni or parents, pretty much anybody involved or somewhat related to the DNA. We send a few pictures, and we have a paragraph or two that we kind of blast out every week, and kind of every time we have a big event, just to kind of keep our sponsors and parents and everybody kind of involved and to kind of see what we're doing.
Does anybody use in-kind contributions? We work with a company for years that their contribution is actually welding, doing our aluminum weld of our frame rather than direct money. So if you work with companies that have some services that you can use, they might be willing to do that as well.
We've done some of that in the past. But, we do a week zero competition that many of you attend, and we have some companies that won't donate money, but they'll donate a product or something that can be raffled off. And so that works out nice for that. We have gotten some polycarb scrap cutoffs and things like that normally they would set aside to use for another project that they would give to the team instead. It's been a while since that's happened. We've had some meal sponsorships on Saturdays, so restaurants will give us meals when we work all day on Saturdays. That has been something that's happened for us in the past. We had our uniform vendor gave us a huge discount one year, and we listed them as sponsor as a result of giving us just slightly over their cost. I think it was. I anticipated it was something slightly over their cost, so we made them a sponsor. So we've done some of those things, but we don't do a lot of in-kind stuff. Does anyone else do a lot of in-kind type of thing?
2129, like half of our stuff is in-kind. So Stratus is a big one for us. We had a mentor who worked for them. Now we're just normal sponsored by Stratasys. And they'll 3D print pretty much anything that we send them, especially to Ultem. We really love Ultem. So they do that stuff for us. We have a anodizing sponsor that I don't think we've ever used. As well as we last year, our captain wanted to do all sorts of testing on batteries, and that he did. And to do that, he needed some really expensive battery testing equipment. And we got an in-kind sponsor to just ship us one product, pretty much the end of the relationship. And they did that. We did all sorts of research on that. So we've had that, as well as we've thought about doing some food sponsors, but oftentimes they'll like also give us money. And when the choice between food and money appears to us, it's mostly money. But in-kind sponsorships are really important because you can get things that otherwise would cost way more. Because to them, you know, they're trying to make a profit on their products. So giving you the product is cheaper than giving you money that you're going to use on their product anyway.
So the Miller Bots partnered with there's a CNC machine shop, and they give us they'll pull out scrap that we can use because they have to pay to get rid of it. So they pull out the pieces that we can use, and we use it for practicing so that our new students can practice on stuff that you know, making cutting and such. So that was really nice to have because we're not spending money on the parts to do that.
I know two things kind of related to this. Our team doesn't do it, but I know that Hermantown Talons 5232, with talking with them, they do this. They have a Amazon wish list that they kind of just have open, and sometimes they'll just have things that will just show up at their door that people are that sponsor a product or something like that. And they also reach out to a lot of these businesses for those things, like not necessarily in their local area, but like businesses as a whole on a wider region, just to see, hey, could you sponsor us with this product, or can we test this out, and other things like that. So it's something that's out there that's really cool.
One thing that the NMRC's done this fall, that's the Northern Minnesota Robotics Conference. A bunch of teams up in the northern part of the state here. We applied for some grants through Walmart, Sam's Club, and you have to be either a educational institution or a nonprofit. But I just deposited $4,500, and it's a pretty simple application. You got to get into their system, but they give away a bunch of money every year.
We're applying for Walmart right now. In fact, my daughter's upstairs doing that right now.
Good.
So would you mind sharing the link to that?
Somebody else might be faster than me. I don't have it currently, but I'll try to get it here.
While we kind of have a lull here, a lot of people have talked about sponsors and grants. The one thing I haven't heard a lot about is volunteer fundraising. A lot of places will hire volunteer groups to come in and work and provide funds. 2823 goes and works at most recently the Allianz Stadium. We raised $3,000 over a couple of nights doing that. We worked many races over the years. We did Chocoholic Frolic last year. That raised us over $1,000. So depending on where you're at, those opportunities may or may not exist, but they've been very good for us.
How was working at Allianz? So Miller Bots did Twins last year. We raised about 7,500. We did 5 games, raised 7,500. We didn't really see the time. I mean, the money was nice, but the time to set everything up and the time to actually work the games, along with the age requirement, was really hard. So it was like the same 6 people had to like give up their weekends to work.
Sure. Allianz was nice in the way that it was set up for us because it was handled through the Highland Park PTSA. So it wasn't just the robotics team that had to do it. So we were able to work 2 games, 6-hour shifts. Ended up being close to $20 an hour per head, but we weren't under a requirement to do 7 games because staffing 7 games for us would have been very difficult. We would have burned out our volunteers. It would have been tough, but the age requirement was only 13. So we were able to fill it, with students that were on the team, with siblings, with parents. It was pretty manageable for us. If it had been 5 games, I would have been worried.
Yeah, we were Twins request that you commit to 10. We said we wouldn't be able to do that for smaller groups. They do pair you up with other groups, but then you split. They do pay you $20 an hour per head for 5 hours, but there's setup, which is an additional 2 hours. And if there's a rain delay, you're literally there for like 11 hours. It was
Yeah, that's a lot.
Being the parent that was there for all 5 of the events was hard.
Yeah, that sounds tough. I know that Highland has done some volunteering at Vikings games in the past, and those ended up being almost 11-hour days at times. So Allianz was really nice with the fact that if it got to be 9:30 and there was anybody there under 17, they were out the door. Like they won't let them work past that, and they're very careful to make sure that they're on the ball with that.
One thing that we do at our... Go ahead.
I know something that the DNA 4009 has done in the past is we've worked with our school district in a lesser capacity to like do the high school games and stuff like that for concessions and stuff like that. So it's a little easier because those games don't go for those 11 hours. I know it's a little less money, but it's a little bit more convenient for that. And there's not a whole big commitment as well. So that's something you can kind of look for as well, maybe.
Yeah, I'll echo Matt on that. We do the same thing. We have 3 or 4 concessions a year that we do with our team, and I think we get $250 or something like that. But for basketball games and football games, they have school clubs sign up to run concessions, so that's a little bit of a fundraiser for us. And then Sam had a question here too about how much our team's charging students to participate and travel. We charge nothing. Our students can fully participate in every aspect of the team all year round and pay $0. But that's just how we have to run it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any students because our kids don't have money.
I will share for KnightKrawler. We have a $200 activity fee, which matches the standard activity fee for volleyball or softball or baseball at the school. But that fee is not paid if you're on what used to be called free and reduced lunch. Now that all students have free lunch, it's financial assistance, or however they're phrasing it now. So the activity is 100% free for anyone on financial assistance, and for everyone else, we have a $200 activity fee. And then since 2020, we have changed our travel. So it used to be that there was a travel fee, and we would attempt to charge what it actually costs for us to go to Duluth. I mean, Duluth is where we usually go. We would attempt to charge enough money so that would cover our travel costs for Duluth. And we have made all travel fees optional. So now it's a donation, which, because we're a 501c3, is tax deductible. We still do the same amount, but we make it optional for everybody. It doesn't matter what your income status is or your free and reduced lunch or any of that stuff. All travel fees are optional. But we still recommend, if you're willing to make a donation to cover your students' costs, I think it's about $240 or $250 to cover costs for Duluth. That's transportation, hotel, food, and then covering the chaperones' rooms as well. The half of the chaperones' room and half of any mentors' rooms. And then for champs, we recommend the same fee, but based on last year's cost, that $250 donation for travel only covered about 1/4 of the cost. It cost us about $1,000 a piece for students to go to champs last year. So we only ask for 1/4 of that cost, and we fundraise/sponsorship the rest. Otherwise, it just gets to be too much. I mean, $750 total, or $700 total if you actually paid your fee and then gave the recommended amount as a donation, is still an awful lot of money. And we struggle with asking for that amount of money, but because we have such a big team and we have to have a bus and so many hotel rooms and so many chaperones, the price does get pretty high.
We're Miller Bots are going to struggle this year because we don't pay to travel because we don't travel. We haven't traveled the last 2 years. We decided to only go one competition. And then we do the week -1 and the week 0 events. So MRI, and then we do MRI and mini. All of those are local. So we usually load the kids up in cars and go, so there's no cost if they want to attend. But this will be the first year in the last 2 years that we've traveled. The year before that, so 2021, we had a small group that went to Iowa, and the kids it was the drive team, and then the drive team got to pick a successor for their group that would be the drive team the next year, because the drive team was all the seniors. So they took that small group, and that was the only one that went to that competition. The rest of the team stayed behind.
Last year, Talon, we usually charge a highly subsidized fee, except we decided that the students that would be subsidized would be ones that highly participated in the team, put in a minimum amount of hours to show that you're actually contributing. If you didn't put in that amount of hours, then we expected you to pay your whole way. So it was a new thing that the kids came up with last year, because we usually have a large group that goes up to Duluth. Of course, if people need sponsorship, that's always available.
Yeah, No Mythic charges travel and admission fees, but they all operate on a sliding scale. So we have, I think our application, or not, admission fee to the team is usually around $200, and we usually go to one traveling competition a year. We'll see how that shakes out this year, but usually we just go to Duluth and then Minneapolis. And I don't think we charge a fee for Minneapolis because we don't, that's not a traveling competition. But I think our Duluth fee usually shakes out to be around $150 to $200, and then I think this past year, because we qualified for Worlds later than we would have liked. We qualified, I think, week 5, whatever week 10K was. We didn't have as much time to fundraise, so our travel fee to Worlds was a little bit higher than it was the year before. I think it shook out to be right around $400. But again, those were all sliding scale. We are lucky to, we have a grant that we apply to every year, the Smith grant, that gives us $10,000, and as a whole, and we usually apply for like 2 separate grants under that larger Smith Corporation. So we have one for shop improvement that we use the money from that grant to go towards like tools that we're looking to purchase for the shop. So like we got a tube bender that way 1 year. And then the other part of that grant goes towards student accessibility and inclusivity. So we use a part of the money that we get from that grant to help us be able to like make those fees sliding scale. So, when students can't pay the full, suggested donation, the money from that grant usually balances out that. So that we find that to be really helpful.
One of the things. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
A participation requirement that need to actually be working on the robot or showing up to help with marketing or put some hours in rather than just show up for tournaments?
The Miller Bots has an hours. So if you're in order to travel, so if we were going to travel, we have an hours. You have to meet a minimum amount of hours. I think it's 70%.
Our teams do. We have them all clock in and clock out. Just got a little fingerprint scanner thing, which they all think is super cool. So typically we bring 8 students per team to competition, which sounds really small, but that's what we do. And we take the top 4 hours getters, and they automatically get to go as long as they're eligible, academically eligible. And then they pick the rest of their team to come with them. So yeah, we definitely track their hours, and the ones that are contributing the most get the most opportunity.
KnightKrawler has a point system, and so you can earn a point by accomplishing about 3 to 4 hours worth of work, which is like 1 to 2 nights. And so you go to a mentor and you say, I did this thing, and we sign off on them and we give them a points. And for us, the reason why we do points is sort of twofold. We have had attendance issues in the past where it wasn't equitable for people because they had church on Wednesday, or maybe their mom or their dad worked on another night of the week that we meet and they have to take care of their younger sibling. And so we removed sort of their attendance requirement from participation and things like that. And people that I'm sure everyone has experienced this, where you have a certain set of students where robotics is a social event for them, not a place where they do work. And so by giving them a point for work accomplished, that motivates everyone to work, and those that make it a social event struggle to get the points they need for attending competition or lettering or whatever else we might put a points restriction on.
And I'll say with that, this year we're updating it a little bit. Previously it was you needed 10 points by Duluth to go to Duluth. And then we also had 20 points to receive a varsity letter in robotics. This year, we also have a 4-point training point minimum that'll happen in December. So in order to be considered like an active member on the team, you need to have 4 points. That 4 points is very easy to get if you just do your sub-team training. But we sometimes have students where it's like, are they on the team? Are they off the team? And then they scramble to get points in February, and it's just not ideal. So we've also trying that out this year, and we'll see how that goes.
Well, the other thing we push is having students work in marketing. That becomes a requirement because a lot of the kids just want to show up to build, and a team is part of the team has to be marketing. So you have to be doing both in order to, as you say, get points or hours, or they're more highly rated an hour of marketing than it is sitting there building on the robot.
We have something similar for lettering. I believe, Lexi, we decided this year that you have to have one outreach point, which would be going and doing a demo or presenting or writing something for a sponsor, anything that encourages STEM in the community, whether that's to younger students, or out in the global community to promote the team or promote STEM or robotics. But it's for lettering, it's not for travel.
Yeah, 21, 29. We have detailed clock in, clock out for everybody, so we have an accurate number of hours. But we haven't used that to decide who pays and who doesn't for competition, or who goes and who doesn't. Largely because the hours get so high that it's, just picking the top 10 people. Even the 11th person has put in so much time that it feels unfair to cut them out. But we do have some issues with, like, by the time it gets to lettering, that's some amount of hours, it's some amount of outreach hours, it's some amount of mentors deciding, who has put in valuable time. I believe they rate students on a 7-point scale, from 1 being like present and pleasant to 7 as, you're there all the time, always making an impact. So only for lettering does it come into effect, but for competitions for us, it's the same for everybody. And that also adds a little bit to the equality too, in that, if you can't make it all the time, that's understandable, because everybody puts in so much time, it doesn't make a lot of difference at that level.
Nomadic doesn't have a very complicated attendance system. We just track. We have an attendance sheet that I'm realizing we haven't encouraged captains to fill in yet. Should maybe do that. But we do have an attendance sheet that we just use to keep track of whether students were there the full-time, part-time, or not at all during a specific practice, and then we use that to just track attendance over the course of the season. So we can notice trends and oh, the student hasn't shown up in a couple of practices. We should maybe check in with them, see what's going on, see if they need support in any way, or if maybe just the team isn't for them. I don't think, at least in the time that I've been on the team, we've had a conversation with the team about, or a conversation with the student about not being able to travel to a competition because of their attendance at the shop. Largely because I think we generally find that if students are drastically decreasing their number of practices spent at the shop, they usually just stop participating in the team as a whole, and then don't show back up for competitions, and that makes that pretty easy. I'm sure we might run into a situation in the future where we have a student that has shown up to 1 practice a month leading up to competitions, and then wants to travel to competitions, and we might have to tell that student I'm sorry, no. But I haven't, I don't think we've had that conversation as long as I've been on the team. We certainly don't have as complicated of a system. But, yeah.
I'm looking at the time. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to pull us back to our topic of the night to see if there's any closing things people want to share. There was one thing that I wanted to share about, related specifically to budget and finances, that I failed to bring up earlier, but I'll do that now. Every month when I do the books about once a month, and every month when I do the books, I send out the budget, and I show to the students, to the student leaders and to the mentors, and say, this is what we budgeted, this is where we're at currently. And so I don't send out the line by line transactions to bore everybody to death, but I do send out our full budget, which is 100 lines and I think 12 subcategories. And so you can look at within that individual how much are we spending on the robot, how much are we spending on laptops, whatever it might be. You can see where we're at and what we budgeted. And then you can go all the way down to total income, total expenses. You can just see where we're at in the two big broad categories. But I do that every month. And this year we have 2 students on the team who are interested in the accounting, which makes me very excited that someone else wants to be interested in something as important as the money. And so our plan is we're going to send more detail to those 2 students, but it'll be the system that I built sort of anonymizes, so it doesn't show anything about what students made a donation for travel or paid an activity fee. I've got that all cross-referenced off, so it's anonymized. But those 2 students are going to take that data, at least this is the current plan, and they're going to turn that into pie charts or graphs or something that we can share out to the broader team of here's how we're doing, and here's how we're doing compared to last year. Whatever they want to come up with, it's kind of exciting that we have students who want to be more involved in the management. It's the fiscal management of the team. Something else I wanted to say earlier too that I forgot to say is that the captains and mentors about 5 years ago established a fiscal policy for the team. And we decided back then that we wanted to have sort of a rainy day fund. And so we have a fiscal policy that we will always attempt to finish the year with enough money in savings to cover 50% of whatever our budget was for the year. So if we lose 2 major sponsors and it were to take us a couple of years to get them back, the team wouldn't be in trouble. I know that when I first joined the team, I heard things like, well, we're kind of out of money. So the treasurer back then, I put some money in the bank to cover us until this sponsorship money we know is coming comes in. And we didn't want to be in that type of situation where we were running that close to the edge. So it took us about 4 or 5 years, but we finally got to the point where we had enough kind of a backstop, an emergency rainy day fund, so that each year we attempt to carry over enough money to cover at least 50% of what the budget was the year before. And we got lucky in a couple of ways that we got a lot extra sponsorship those years. And we're like, we need to set that aside. We need to work on our rainy day fund. But we've done it. And the team's in probably the best financial shape it's ever been in now. And it's good. If you're a nonprofit, it's good to set up sort of those fiscal policies of how you want to operate the team. Go ahead, Mason. I didn't have anything else.
So like adding onto that, I mean, our team, we're in a fortunate situation where we kind of built up money for 12 years. But we definitely keep a rainy day fund too. Ours is close to 150% at this point because it just keeps growing. We always budget way higher seemingly than what we spend. But something that we're changing this year is that at kickoff, we want to make it aware to everybody how much we've budgeted and kind of how much money we have, because we've seen a recurring problem where the students have no idea how much stuff actually costs. Like most students, if you ask them where most of the money goes, they will say the robot. Which in our team's case is not at all true. It's the registration fees or competitions by a huge margin. So
and I will echo, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I will echo that. In fact, it's not just the students. Our activities director had no idea how much money it cost to run the team, and was off by like a factor of 4. So I think sharing kind of where your money comes from and where your money goes is great for the students. It's great for the parents. It's great for the administration. I will share, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that if we go to Champs, it's $35,000. That's what it was last year for registration and travel for the team our size. It's frightening. It's terrifying, honestly. As the person who manages the money, I will share this, that out of our budget meeting, we looked at where we thought we could get sponsors and how much we thought we could make on our fundraising that week based on what we did last year. And we're $12,000 short if we end up going to Champs again. So we're looking at that and saying right now, if we go to Champs, I mean, if we don't go to Champs, then we'll probably finish the year with extra money. But because we only collect 25% of the travel fees from parents, and that's if everyone paid, which we know everyone's not going to pay. So we only probably collect 15 to 20% from families. And then, so that's 80%. We'll finish the year in the surplus if we don't go to Champs. But if we go to Champs, we're currently looking at a $12,000 shortfall. So having conversations about money, although it kind of can be uncomfortable and it kind of can a lot of times feel not inappropriate, I think is important, because I think it's good for all of us to have ideas of what it takes to run a team and kind of get that perspective of how are we doing compared to everyone else.
Yeah, Scott, when you run go to champs, how much of your team gets to go?
Everyone that got their points. We're having conversations about that. But from an equity perspective, and equity is a big deal for KnightKrawler, we don't want anyone to not go because they can't afford it. And so if you put in the contributions of the team and you've earned the points that qualify you to travel, that's it. You can go.
Right. I mean, that's a big unknown.
It is.
I guess, I mean, we didn't get to champs last year. We did the year before, and we learned about it a few days before. It was a $50,000 hit. But there was no way. I mean, we know we probably are not going to get to champs every year. So was this, these kids, this might be their only experience. We had to make sure they all went.
Right. And, and we're on the other side of that. We've been very fortunate. We've been very fortunate in competition. We've gotten to go many times. And we look at this and say, maybe we shouldn't go. But then, you've got a senior who's been on the team 4 years, who've worked 30 hours a week at robotics. They put in a ton of time, and you're like, what are you going to do for that senior who's like, this is their year to be the driver on the field at champs, or the pit crew leader at champs, or the robot where they spent hundreds of hours in CAD to come up with the perfect intake mechanism. So we're struggling with this idea of, do we only take half a bus? Do we try to share a bus with another team? And then you get into the idea of, well, who doesn't go? And then you start having these equity conversations. And KnightKrawler's put a big emphasis on equity the last few years. And where we decided at this leadership meeting, when we did our budget meeting, is that we set a limit to how much we were willing to pull out of savings. So how far in the red could we finish the year financially? And as long as we did not dip into our rainy day fund more than X $1,000, we would still send the whole team. If it looked like we were going to dip in more than that, then we were going to have to start thinking about how do we pare that back to half the team. No one thought it would be a good idea to deny a senior a chance to a trip to champs in their final year on the team. And so then the other decision is, how do you make those tough decisions on taking fewer students? It's a struggle, and we struggled with it for a long time, actually, in the budget meeting.
Yeah, I guess maybe to piggyback on that as well, DNA not being as fortunate to go to champs as many times, we still feel like it is we want to bring everybody. And we were talking about budgets and money and stuff, and I guess my last little point is, we do have a rainy day fund as well, but we also every year put into a budget for championships itself. So we raise, I don't know what the number is, but like $2,000 every year just goes into a champs fund separately away from our rainy day fund, just in case there is that opportunity that we do get to go to championships and we do want to bring everybody. So I guess it's maybe a conversation to have. Do you raise money every year in just on the back burner in case you do get to go, excluding your rainy day fund?
Yeah, we budget for it every year, and the idea being that if we don't need the money, then that's just money we get to put into our savings, or maybe we make a big equipment purchase with the money. But we do budget for it every year. Does anyone have any other final last minute finances, budgeting, fundraising, anything that they want to close out with, either questions or advice that they want to share with anyone else?
I do have a quick question. For the teams that have a 501c3, how does your relationship look like with the district or your school? Like, are you transparent with that, or are you a little bit closed? Like, do you kind of tell them about it? I'm just kind of curious on, like, being that you're such a different entity from all these other schools programs. Like, how do you guys handle that or interact with that? I'm just kind of curious.
The school is very open. I mean, the school is, it shouldn't be a mystery to anyone at our school that we're a nonprofit. We are basically a booster club, and many of the booster clubs at our school are 501c3s.
Yep, we're the same. Although last year was the first year in any of our coaches' memory that we actually got a bus from the school. So that was pretty nice.
Nice.
Apparently, we're going to get it again this year too. We'll see.
That's great.
I was just curious about that. I'm just something.
I would like to share a unique fundraiser that we started doing last year that doesn't bother me at all if all the other teams want to copy us, because I don't think there'll be much of an overlap at all. I have a client that I work with who does, they'll do white label coffee roasting. They roast coffee. And so if you buy 50 pounds at a time, they'll package them into either 12 ounce or 16-ounce bags, put a label on them, and you can go pick up 50, 100, 400 pounds of coffee in basically retail, ready to sell packaging. And we've been selling at farmers markets. And we're hoping to start doing some more type of like CSA type thing where order your coffee and pick it up first week of the month or something like that. It's been very good for us. We on a 1 pound bag we sell for $15, and it's a blend. We only do the blends because they're the cheapest way to get coffee. You can do the like fancy Colombian or Costa Rican or Sumatran or something like that if you really want to. But we tell them how much we want. We tell them dark, medium. We actually do medium, dark, and extra dark. We pay like $7.80 a bag, and we sell it for $15. So it's a great profit margin compared to a lot of the fundraising that people do, where they're making only 15 or 20%. So if anyone's interested in that, it's millcityroasters.com, and you can email me as well. I can get you connected with the people that do it. I work there 1 or 2 days a week doing some of their software stuff. But
awesome,
they
Scott.
do.
That had been on my list to email you about.
Oh yeah, it's
last year you mentioned it.
Yeah, and they do it for all kinds of people too. And I've mentioned to them saying, I could send you a whole bunch of robotics teams, and like, hey, we'll do it for anybody. So they actually roast a lot of coffee for a lot of the coffee shops that are too small to have their own coffee roaster in the place. So they just do the coffee roasting for them, and it's all white label. They can call it whatever they want to call it. So yeah, it's been really good for us. And feel free to use it. It doesn't bother me at all if you take it. All right, any final things? Excellent. So again, please volunteer to host a topic or to give a presentation. Lexi posted the Sign Up Genius form earlier tonight. It was also in the email that I sent out. It'll be in all the emails going forward. And if no one signs up to do a topic next week, then I suppose Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or maybe 1 o'clock on a Sunday, I'll choose a topic off of the list that's been suggested before, and we'll just roll with it. But thank you, everybody. I did not do a lot of talking tonight compared to previous nights, and I loved it. So I know that I often talk a lot and often too much. You guys did a great job of keeping the conversation rolling tonight, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.